When people ask me what I do for a job, there are a variety of different things that I can tell them depending on how I'm feeling or how many follow-up questions that I want. But one of those things is I could say I'm a sex educator. But what does that mean? And how does one become a sex educator? Because I make sex education content online, I know that a lot of my followers and viewers either are sex educators or want to become sex educators. So I wanted to make a video all about how. Now, I am just one person and I have taken a very specific and unique route into the sex education field. So I wanted to use this video more as like a resource. So I'll be signposting to lots of different things. I would get your pen and paper ready. Definitely check the description of this video because I will be putting a ton of resources and things that I mention in this video there. And this video is very much going to be a starting point. There are so many different areas within sex ed that can be gone into in more detail by people who specialize in those areas. So take this video as like a general overview, but hopefully there's going to be some good nuggets in here that will help you on your journey to becoming a sex educator, whatever that means for you. Before I dive into your questions, if you're new here, hello, I'm Hannah and I make sex and relationships content here on this channel, and I also have a sex and relationships podcast. Please subscribe if you want to. Right, let's get into the questions. The first thing that I noticed was that about every other question was about qualifications, certification, degrees, what do you need to study, all of that. So I'm going to spend quite a lot of time probably diving into this because this is a big topic and so many of you wanted to know about it. And then there's lots of other questions as well, which I'll get to later, but just FYI, the answer to this question is going to be a long one. Actually, I'm going to put timestamps for each question in the description as well, so you can move around to what you think is relevant to you. Okay, qualifications. Here's the thing. There is no official way to become a sex educator through certain qualifications. There are no requirements. There is no board of people who say this person can be a sex educator, this person can't, and there is a course or a process that you have to go to in order to get that tick. That doesn't exist. Now that's a whole other discussion about if something like that should exist. You know, in the same way that there are qualifications that you absolutely have to get if you want to become a lawyer, if you want to become a doctor, if you want to become a teacher. In the sex and relationships field, it is the Wild West. And I'm going to get into some detail about some courses if that's what you're interested in. But the first thing that I will say is that you don't need one. But caveat, that depends on what your personal goals are and what direction within sex ed you want to get into. You are a sex educator if you are doing the work. In whatever capacity you are working, if you are doing some form of sex education, even if that's on a voluntary basis, you are a sex educator, you have that experience, and you are qualified to do what you do. So I just wanted to put that out there already, even if it is just me talking to myself, because I have huge imposter syndrome, especially around the certification qualification area. There was another question that was, where on earth do you start and what possible careers are there? So I think I also need to answer this question before we talk about training, because there are so many different kinds of careers out there in sex ed. So you could become a traditional sex educator, which means you go into schools and you teach young people about sex and relationships. There's that side. There's also maybe something similar to what I do, which is creating media content about sex and relationships. So that could be YouTube videos, podcasts, you could be a writer, you might be a journalist, basically a sex content creator. That is another form of educating people about sex. You might be a sex worker or a porn performer. I think it's absolutely crucial that we include sex workers in the sex ed conversation because they are huge key players in this field and they are so often stigmatized, and that's just not on because Sex workers are the original sex educators and they absolutely should be included in this. Then other routes that you could go down a medical route. You could become a doctor or a nurse and specialize in sexual and reproductive health. You could go down a psychology therapy route and become a sex and relationships therapist or counselor. What else? It's almost infinite. You might work with perpetrators, you might work with victims, you might work with LGBTQ plus folk. There are all sorts of different charity sector jobs that even if it's not directly about sex and relationships, that would come into it. So if you work with a homeless charity, for instance, then sex and relationships might be conversations that come up. So there really is like just such a broad range and a huge scope for these kinds of roles. And your primary job might not be as a sex educator, but sex education is something that you would have to do day to day, week to week in your role. You could also be somebody who runs talks and workshops and works like one-on-one with clients as a sex coach or something. Like, it is infinite. So the reason why I'm racking my brain and listing all of these different possibilities, and that is absolutely not a finite list, is because it depends on your personal goals. Which of these routes do you want to go down? And then once you've decided that, that will inform what qualifications you may need, if any at all. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that if you're going to be a sex educator, you need no training and no experience at all, but it doesn't necessarily have to come through formal educational routes, because not everyone can access those, but everyone can access the internet. You could get books out of your library. So there are ways to teach yourself and do the training, even if you don't get like a piece of paper and a big old tick at the end of it. Okay, that is my spiel, but now I'm going to list some places in the UK that I know of that you can get some training. So I know that UCLan, which is the University of Lancaster, UCLan, very sorry. They have an undergrad BSc, I believe, in sexual health. University of Central Lancashire. There we go. I'm from Lancashire. I'm a Mancunian and I don't even know the name of that university. Very sorry. Okay, so yes, they have a BSc in sexual health studies. From what I've seen, this is the only undergrad course in the UK. There are lots of masters and postgraduate courses in the UK around sexuality and gender studies. But again, that might be for you, it might not be for you, depending on what route you want to take, because some of them are MA, some of them are MSc, some of them are MRes. It really depends. Oh, there you go. That's another route that you could take as a sex educator, is becoming an academic. So speaking of masters, for a while I was thinking of doing a master's, and so I did a ton of research into different courses in the UK. Again, not a finite list. I only wrote down and saved the ones that I was interested in, which means that it is very London focused. But I did the research and I decided I don't want to do a master's yet. We'll see, who knows. But let me tell you what I found. No point in keeping all of this information to myself. Let's share it. Okay, so yes. So these are all master's courses in London. Also, I was doing this research a year or so ago, so if these courses don't exist anymore, I'm sorry. Birkbeck have a few different programs. The one that I was specifically looking at was Gender and Sexuality and Culture MA, but I believe that they also have an MSc and they also have Gender, Sexuality and Society. So they're like slightly different courses depending on if you're maybe humanities or social sciences. SOAS have a Gender and Sexuality MA, and SOAS as a university have a focus on Asia, Africa and the Middle East. UCL have one called Gender, Society and Representation, which is an MA. LSE have a whole gender studies postgrad department, I believe, and there's a gender MSc and then also a gender brackets sexuality MSc. And then Goldsmiths have a queer history MA. And those are all the ones I wrote down. This is not finite. I know that Birmingham also have some master's courses in gender and sexuality, and I know that the University of Manchester also have a Gender, Sexuality and Culture MA too, I believe. So I was just looking at London because I live in London. There are also some places where you can start and have a look. The other thing to be aware of with qualifications is that there are organisations that provide courses and they may have accreditation attached to them. So you may have seen a video that I made last year because I did a course with ACET to become an Esteem member, and it was their Esteem Relationships and Sex Education training. And this was a 4-day course, and I got a little piece of paper, a little qualification at the end of it. I know that during lockdown they've still been running these courses online, so definitely go and check them out. I really love this as kind of like an overview into teaching sex ed in the classroom, because that's something that I haven't done, and I wanted to kind of learn more about it and be open to it and be prepared for it if that's something that I want to go into. Oh my god, I forgot a whole other way that you can go into sex education, and that is obviously as a teacher. And there are some sexual health charities in the UK, such as Brooke, who provide sex education training to teachers. If you are a teacher or you want to become a teacher, I would highly recommend checking out Brooke's training. They also have this really amazing traffic light tool, which helps to discern whether certain sexual behaviors in children and young people are normal as part of healthy children's sexual development, or if they would raise some flags for concern there. I think that is a really useful tool for all teachers, all youth workers, anyone who works with young people to be aware of and be able to reference. Also, the Sex Education Forum is an amazing resource for teachers and people who work with young people. Have I said everything I want to say about qualifications? No, because I recently signed up for a course. So I recently signed up to do a course with the Institute for Sexuality Education and Enlightenment, which is an American US-based organization, but because of lockdown, they're running stuff online. So I was like, I will take this opportunity. So basically I'm doing their sex educator training, which means that in 2-ish years' time, I will be a certified sex educator. However, that does not take away from the fact that I am a sex educator right now. It just means that this one organization was just like, yes, we approve them, that individual. And also because I work mostly in the UK and it's a US organization, like it probably as a piece of paper might not make any difference to my career. However, the reason why I wanted to do it, and this is again why I think it's really important to really look into what your personal goals are. This for me is about personal and professional development. I recognize that I've been doing this for so many years, and there's only so much that I can bootstrap and that I can learn by myself or in like small doses. And so I wanted to actually commit to a full 2 years of learning in order to brush up on my skills, learn new things, and basically see what's out there really. And here's the thing, that course is expensive, and there are a lot of US-based organizations that provide these more long-term courses and accreditation in sex education, but they cost you a lot of money, and not everybody has access to money and time. And so that's why I want to emphasize that you don't need these. They are not a necessity. However, if you want to become a medical sexual health provider and a doctor, you need the qualifications. You need them. Okay, that was a lot of information, and now I'm going to dive into some more questions, which will hopefully maybe cover some follow-up questions that you have. We shall see. Okay, do you need a large social media following? Absolutely not. I listed all of those different ways that you can go into being a sex educator, and literally only one of them requires you to have a social media presence, which would be the equivalent of what I do. Or not even that, like maybe if you're a workshop leader, you might also want to have a social media presence, but also not necessary. So no, absolutely not. It is not a prerequisite at all. My full-time job is in sex ed for a company. How do I make the transition and work for myself? Great question. My friend and fellow sex educator Ruby Rare, this is actually something that she did. She started out volunteering for Brooke and then had a job there and was a sex educator with Brooke. And now she is freelance and works for herself, and she creates online content, she's writing a book, she hosts lots of sex ed workshops, and building that social media presence that she has now and doing those workshops was something that she was already doing while she was working at Brooke, and then she made the transition. Obviously, you don't have to do what she does, but she might be someone who is useful for you to follow to see what her journey has been like. But basically, whilst you're in your job, and this is the same for like if you have a full-time job and you're wanting to go freelance, no matter what the field is that you're in, really doing your research and like already having like your fingers in those pies and already doing that stuff on the side if you have time, ideally, so that you can make that transition as smooth as possible. I can't give you any specific advice because I don't know specifically like where you want to be moving to and where you're moving from, but networking, letting people know that maybe this is something that you're thinking about doing, and really looking at all of those different options that are out there. Obviously, there are loads of sex ed roles that would mean you are employed by a company, but if you're somebody who wants to be freelance and work for yourself, I would highly recommend Cameron Glover. She is a sex ed business coach. Yes! Follow her on Instagram, check out her website. She has got loads of amazing resources. She does coaching as well, and all of it is about how to run a successful sex education business as an independent, basically. And on that note, somebody asked, would I be able to make money and earn a living from this? Absolutely. And if that's something that you want more information on, Cameron Glover. She has got you covered for how being a sex educator is absolutely a viable career financially. And she has got all of the tips and tricks on how to do that. So yeah, definitely check her out if you want to learn more about that. Again, obviously, depending on what area of the field you want to go into, your paychecks are going to be coming from all sorts of different places. So it is really varied. And even though there are so many cuts, and even though it is the last thing people think about, unfortunately, and there is this stereotype that there is no money in sex ed, it is true for maybe some of those fields, but there's also a huge amount of money in sex. Like, I earn quite a lot of money from my affiliate link with Love Honey. So that is one way that I earn money as a sex educator, is by educating people about different sex toys and then earning commission based off those sales. So you can get real creative with how you make money as a sex educator. Some sell workshops, some sell online resources, might have an OnlyFans. Like, there are many, many ways. Is there an official international standard for sex educators? No, but there is a kind of international standard for comprehensive sex education. UNESCO came up with some technical guidelines basically on what makes good relationships and sex education, and I'll also link that below. It says that it should be delivered by a trained, qualified individual, but says nothing about what that means. So great. As a primary teacher, what books / topics / routines can I be including in my regular day? This is a great question because you potentially could be a relationships and sex educator as a primary school teacher. So firstly, I would highly recommend checking out Sex Positive Families on Instagram. They have amazing resources in terms of talking to children and young people about sex. But then incorporating into your classroom a culture of consent. So that could be around touching, hugs, borrowing pencils, basically asking permission, respecting each other, respecting boundaries, body autonomy. That is something that you absolutely can be incorporating into your classroom. And then another thing is looking at the materials that you use with the kids. Who are the characters in those materials? Are they diverse? Are they representing a variety of different sexualities, genders, family structures? These are all things that you can be incorporating day to day in the classroom without sitting down and going, today is a sex ed class. It's just ongoing and it can just be constant. Sex Positive Families on their website have a really great list of books for different ages. So if you want to maybe get some more sex positive, some more diverse books in your classroom, definitely check out that list. Maybe some thoughts on becoming a sex educator when you haven't had sex but know a lot. Oh boy, do I have some thoughts about this. So the first time that I went to VidCon in the US, I was talking to somebody at the bar at this party or something, and it was like, oh, what kind of videos do you make? And I said, oh, I make sex education videos. And this guy basically said to me like, oh, how many people have you slept with? Like, what makes you qualified to teach sex ed? And then went on to brag about the hundreds of women that he had slept with. And here's the thing. I would rather someone who has had zero personal experiences with sex and relationships, but who knows a lot and is considered and is thoughtful teach sex ed than that man. So your personal experiences do not matter. I think as long as what you are bringing to the people who you are teaching, to the people that you're interacting with, is for them and you're listening to them and you are being thoughtful, that's all that matters. And then there's been a couple of questions about identity and being a sex educator. So one person has said, as a trans, bi and sexually active male, can I be a sex educator? And another person said, is there space for straight white male educators? And absolutely, I think there is space for everyone. Granted, it is a very female, femme dominated field, but the more people that we have who encompass different identities means that they might be able to reach different communities and have, you know, different perspectives on it. And I think that it's something that absolutely everyone can do. Again, your own experiences and your own identity don't make you any better or worse at being a sex educator. For the white, straight, cis man who wants to be a sex educator, like, absolutely go for it. Like, people like you have created a lot of the problems and, you know, are the reason why we need a lot of like good, comprehensive and liberatory sex ed. So, you know, you can be part of the solution too. That would be great. Getting safeguarding approval for in-person sex ed to minors. So this will entirely depend on the organisation or the school that you are going through. So always talk with them, check with them about their safeguarding policies. If you are an independent and you don't have an organisation who has provided you with safeguarding training, the NSPCC have some online safeguarding training. This is on my to-do list to do, so I can't say what it's like, but I know it exists, and that's something that I'm planning on doing as well. Is the focus always on children? Is there space for adult education? Absolutely. Again, this goes back to those wide variety of different areas that you can go into. So adult sex education, you could do through a variety of different charities. You could also do through, you know, running your own workshops. You could do that as a therapist or a coach. Tons. You could also go through universities because they're all adults. And final question, are there government restrictions on certain topics for sex education in schools? Now, I can only talk about the UK government here, and I would say there aren't restrictions. However, there are going to be some new guidelines because sex and relationships education has been made compulsory in schools in England and Wales, and those are coming into effect in September. So literally next month. However, with lockdown, I wouldn't be surprised if the government postponed it for another year, but we will see. Those relationships and sex education guidelines are available for everyone to look at on the government website. But that's really all we have. In terms of restrictions, I mean, you can't show porn to minors, so you can't use porn in the classroom to talk about it. So don't do that. But yeah, I don't know if the situation is different in other countries where maybe there are certain restrictions, especially in maybe some US states where there's like abstinence only education. There'll be a lot more restrictions there. Okay, this has been a long video, lots of information. I really hope that it was useful. Again, links to everything, everyone that I mentioned in the description. I've forgotten another organisation which would be a great resource for some of you. Sexpression is a UK charity and it is run by students, and basically university students volunteer and go into schools and teach sex ed. I did a couple sessions with the Sexpression at my university, so definitely check out if your university has Sexpression, and if they don't have a Sexpression branch, you could always start one. So there you go. Okay, I think that's everything. Thank you for watching. Again, any follow-up questions or ideas, for how to continue this and how I can potentially help you, let me know. And I wish you the best of luck on your sex educator journey. Bye!